Hi there. People are fascinated by birds in flight, and questions about how to get good bird in flight photos are one of the most frequent questions that I get asked. So today I'm going to share with you my top tip for bird in flight photos and a few others along the way. So it's fairly easy to get a photo of a bird in flight, and what a lot of people do is turn their camera to the sky, autofocus, burst of shots, and then you'll get it. And it's really quite easy. But those photos are boring. So if you want to get great bird in flight photos, the thing you want to do is to stop doing that. And the most important thing is to pay attention to the background. It's probably more important than the bird itself, because you want to show off the bird in its environment. So I'm going to give you a few examples here. I'm out at the coast today, and at the moment I'm photographing gannets as they fly by. So if we look around, we've got some sea over here. There's not a lot that's interesting on the sea. There's a couple of boats, but they're too far away, so they're quite small in the screen. We've got some coastline at the far end. That's interesting. We've got these cliffs behind me. So what I'm going to do is focus on a bird in the distance and track it across the sky as it moves into that area where I can get it either against the cliffs or against that coastline in the background. So let's have a go. So what I'm doing here is looking around at all the gannets flying about and looking for ones that I think their trajectory might indicate they're flying towards the area where I want to photograph them. So I'm going to zoom right out, so to 200 millimeters, find a bird and just track it as it starts to move around. And then as it gets nearer and nearer, I'm going to zoom in, and when it passes over the area that I want to photograph it in, then I'll snap the shutter. So it's as simple as that, but it's really about being aware of the environment that you're in and trying to find a bird in an area that makes a nice photo. It's not that complicated, but they're so much more interesting than photos of birds in flight against a plain blue or white sky. So let's compare a couple. Here's one that I've taken earlier this morning. So you can see there the birds flying against that coastline in the background. It tells you something about the environment. It shows off the bird in the area that it lives. And now let's compare it to another photo I took today of a bird against a blue sky. It's nothing special, and anyone can do this. So for me, this is the difference between taking a photo and making a photo. In photography, people often talk about, do you take a photo or make a photo? And I don't really want to get into that debate. But my view is that when you're taking those snapshot, bird in the sky against a plain background, you're not really doing any work. All you're doing is pointing the camera in the right direction and letting your autofocus take care of it. When you're thinking about the background more, you're applying some of your thought process, your artistic intent to come up with something. And that's what makes the difference between taking a photo and making a photo. So I'm going to carry on with this for a while. And all I'm going to do is keep finding the bird in that area that I want to photograph it in, and then fire off a burst of shots. And when I get home, I'm going to pick the one that's most appealing. And that might be about the bird's position, if it's got its wings spread so that the light's covering them nicely, or if it's got an interesting position in the flap of its wings. That might make the difference. But I'll probably end up with half a dozen, maybe 10 photos for each burst that I take, and I'll just pick the best one. So I want to give you a few more examples of what I think are quite nice bird in flight photos. So these you might have seen before in previous videos. Some of them might be new to you because I've got a bit of a backlog of videos I need to edit. Some of you noticed I've not put something out for a few weeks, and that's because I caught COVID and it really knocked me for six. Nothing too serious, but I just didn't even have the energy to edit any videos. So there will be some coming up, but they might be from things I did in late spring, early summer. But anyway, for now, here's a few bird in flight photos to give you a bit more of a feel for the kind of things that I think make good shots. Okay, so hopefully you can see now the kind of thing that I'm going for, and I think these are much better than just photographing a bird against a plain sky. And I know there'll be people out there who'll say, I love those kind of shots. Well, that's great, but this is me sharing with you what I think makes a great photo. And to be fair, I think most photographers would recognise that putting the bird in its environment and showing off a little bit more than a sky is what you're really looking for. You don't get those type of shots that just have a sky in the background that win any awards or competitions or anything like that. They're not the kind of photographs that photographers who sell their photos really sell. You know, they're not that interesting. So if you want to step up your bird in flight shots to the next level, thinking about background is the most important thing. And with that in mind, my next photo review video will be all about birds in flight. So I'm inviting you to send in your photos via my website, just the same as we did for the previous one. And that will be open for the next 2 weeks from the date that this video was published. And needless to say, I probably won't select any photos that are just a bird photographed against a plain sky. So get sending your photos in. I think the people who took part last time really got something from it and enjoyed it. There were a lot of nice comments, and if you've not seen that video, I'll link to it in the description below and up above. Let's talk about some technical tips now. If you're photographing a bird from a standing start, so say for example that the bird is on some cliffs or on a branch or something like that and you're waiting for it to take off, you want your bird to be less than 1/3 in your rule of thirds grid. Probably you only want it to be about 2/3 of one of those thirds, and the reason for that is most birds have a wingspan that's typically 2 to 2.5 times the size of their body. So when they're sat still and their wings are tucked in, they can be quite small in the frame, but when they take off and they spread the wings, they'll almost fill it. So you want to make sure that you've got them nice and small, as I say, probably about 2/3 of 1/3, which gives them ample room to spread the wings and you can still get them all in the frame. The next thing to think about, when you're thinking about that background that I talked about earlier, you want to expose for where the background is. So as you pan across the sky and you're tracking the bird that you're photographing, there will be variations in the light as you move towards or away from the sun. So there's no point exposing for where you're going to focus on the bird and pick them up. You want to expose for where you're going to press the shutter, which is when they've got that nice and interesting background. One of the questions that I always get asked is about shutter speed, and that's really tricky. So a lot will depend on your equipment. If you've got great image stabilization, that's one thing that might mean that you can go for a little bit less shutter speed than somebody who doesn't. And one of the things that's really important, we always want to try to get the shutter speed as low as we can while still capturing the type of action that we want. And the type of action that you want also varies. So you may want to freeze the bird perfectly in the shot, or you may want to have a bit of motion blur in the wings, and so you go for a bit less shutter speed if you want the motion blur, a bit faster shutter speed if you want to freeze the action. So let me give you a few examples. If you're photographing something like a marsh harrier, they fly quite slowly and they flap their wings quite slowly. So you can do something like maybe 1/1600th of a second. If you've got great image stabilization, you might even get away with 1/1200th of a second. Whereas if we think about a small bird like a kingfisher, for example, they're tiny, so that means that they move across your sensor quite fast. So as they travel across and you're tracking them, they will travel across the distance of your sensor really, really quickly. So you want the best chance of freezing them. They also flap their wings quite fast. And so you want to go for something mega fast, so maybe something like 1/4000th of a second if you're going to capture a kingfisher in flight. And then you've got things that are in between. You've got ducks. Ducks flap their wings really fast, but they're a bit bigger than a kingfisher, maybe not as big as a marsh harrier. So you're talking about maybe something like 1/2000th or 1/2500th, but it's really going to vary depending on the type of shot that you want to get and the type of equipment that you've got. And so I can't give you a magic formula for shutter speed, but starting to learn about the subject that you're photographing, how fast they fly, how fast they flap their wings, you'll start to get some intuition about what shutter speed you need for that particular subject. And next, aperture. Well, aperture really doesn't matter with birds in flight. As long as you've got a decent distance to the background, you can really go for any aperture. I would always tend to go for a mid-range aperture because that tends to be where your lens is sharpest. So it might be something like f8, f9, f10, something like that. There's no need to shoot wide open if you're photographing with a massive distance to the background. It will make no difference. So go for something that allows you to get the sharpest picture of the bird that you can. That would be my advice. And then when it comes to ISO, I just use ISO to control my exposure. And then the final thing to think about when it comes to the technical are your lens settings. So your lens will have these little buttons on the side, and you'll have different modes for different types of stabilization, assuming you've got stabilization in your lens. Most will have either 2 or 3. So mode 1 is if you're photographing a stationary subject. So for example, a bird on a branch. That will eliminate a certain type of vibration and give you a little bit more stabilization. If you're photographing something that's moving, you want option 2. So particularly if it's moving in a linear way, so it's flying straight across the sky. If you're photographing something that's a lot more erratic, so they go up and down, left and right and all over the place, they can turn on a sixpence, as the saying goes, then you want mode 3. And mode 3 allows you to photograph things that are a little bit more erratic and will account for that type of vibration. So make sure that you pick the right mode of stabilization for the particular subject you're photographing and the particular style of photograph that you want. So today I've been on mode 2 for most of the day because the type of birds that I'm photographing tend to fly in straight lines. But if I was photographing something like a tern, which can turn with a U rather than an E very quickly, and so I would move to mode 3 in that case. So I'm going to show you a few more of the photos that I got today because I've not just been focusing on birds in flight today. Really pleased with the shots that I got. including a couple of rarities. So one, a Turkestan shrike. It's one of only 10 times that bird's been recorded in the UK. It's not an amazing photo, but I'm really quite pleased to have it in my collection. And a shot of the famous Albert the albatross, the only albatross in the Northern Hemisphere. So that's made today rather special. So here's the Turkestan shrike, a small bird, roughly the same size as a hawfinch. I'd have liked to have got a better picture than this. The light wasn't great, but I managed to get a bit of foreground blur on the right from a bush that I was hiding behind, and I'm pleased to have this vagrant bird for my collection. And here are my favourite pictures of Albert the albatross. The first one, with him set against the sea, would not normally be much better than photographing against the sky, but the dark sea combined with that golden light across its full diagonal 8-foot wingspan is really quite nice. But better are these shots of the albatross flying over gannets. He's befriended some gannets, and so as well as this being an interesting shot, it tells some of the story of this bird that is more than 8,000 miles from home. So just a reminder that my next photo review video will all be about birds in flight. So get your photos into me. You can submit them via my website. There's a link in the description below. 2 weeks from the date of this video being published. And if you've not seen the last photo review video, you can check it out here. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.